It doesn't mean a whole lot of people are using them necessarily yet, because after all, that was just a couple of years ago. It usually takes a few cycles before they're implemented places, and then people change their behaviors that make them able to use them. But I think that will be used in the future. Now you also wanted bibliographic record links for your set records. And that in a way goes a little bit with the multi-volume monograph identification, I think. At least it does in my mind. The difference, and I was interested in the question this morning, because the difference in the way you do multi-volume monographs has been something that since I first came into this environment, I recognized that Europeans had much more of an emphasis of multi-volume monographs, and Americans tended to treat them as a monograph. And I think what the basic sort of difference was that we still have it to some extent and had, was that we treat, in the bibliographic record, we treat the bibliographic entity and rather than the physical entity. And then we go down to a holdings record to do the physical entity. But this had always been a problem. There are many more countries and people with national bibliographies that need the kind of thing that you do, which is to treat the multi-volume monographs as physical entities in the bibliographic record. And so I think it's a positive that finally this was brought up and pushed through the MARC format so that it can accommodate all those. It may not be Americans, but it may be others, particularly those who have national bibliographies. You see, in the United States, we don't have a national bibliography, and we never did. So that's one reason we didn't have. I think people couldn't even understand what the need was to some extent. And so we had other ways that we recorded this information. But I think that was a very positive contribution. It's also the case that I say the bibliographic links for the set records, that I would recommend reading the introduction to that proposal, the German proposal written by Reinhard, that tells about how they plan to treat multi-volume monographs in the MARC formats. There was that question, I think, that came up this morning, and it is an excellent, clear explanation of what they plan to do in Germany to be able to use MARC with their way of doing multi-volume monographs and their treatment of series. You might want to do it slightly different. Some other country, or the KB, or the Netherlands, or something. But it's a very good explanation of how Reinhold and the German community saw their ability to use MARC 21. Then we had a contribution that was to specify types for uncontrolled subjects. We had the field for uncontrolled subjects, the 653 field, for a very long time in MARC, but we never had been able to tell whether it was a name or a topic or a geographic or what. And I think it was a real contribution to have made that specificity possible in the 653 uncontrolled subject field, because it's a very cheap thing to be able to show, and I think it can enhance retrieval. It can enhance people's ability to index in a more logical way, and then to be able to combine indexes as they would like to, particularly as the community seems to be moving to faceted retrieval. Check my time. Then another item that you did was the geographic added entry. Now, why we hadn't had a geographic added entry, I'm not quite sure. It's just it wasn't in the Anglo-American, the ACR cataloging tradition, I suppose. And but I think that is going to be valuable in the future, because you're seeing increasingly emphasis on two areas of our bibliographic records. People are wanting timelines, and they're wanting geographic information so that they can do various kinds of faceted retrieval and faceted work with the records. Another thing was the canceled invalid national bibliography number. Well, obviously, bibliographic number, one of the reasons in fact, I'm not sure about what it is supposed to be, national bibliography. The reason we didn't have that is because we don't have a national bibliography, so it hadn't ever occurred to us. But it brings it in line with the ISSN, the ISBN. Many, many people have national bibliographies. This is an important subfield to be added and made available to anyone, everyone, not just the German community. Another item is the replacement record field. And we had a replacement record field in the authority format, and I'm not quite sure why we didn't have a similar field in the bibliographic format, but we didn't. And it was, I think it was a good thing to have added it, to have brought parity to the two formats in that way. And the Germans asked that a record number be added to the field in the authority format in addition to adding the field to the bibliographic format. And I think that was a very good addition to the MARC formats. And then finally, I wanted to say something about the normalized dates and sequential designations for serials. That is something we all wish for. And it was interesting to our serials people. They had never asked for such a thing because they thought it was impossible because there are no standards really for how you would represent the information. And it's also very difficult to get publishers to give the information in a very standard manner. And I think we do need standards. We need to work on standards in this area. Maybe the Germans can be leaders in that area. We need to standardize the publishers. We need to get them to get as interested in doing this in a standard way or expressing this and not constantly starting new series and constantly doing things that are having double kinds of numbering. And I was thinking at one point in the last 5 years ago maybe that some of the Onyx work was finally going to bubble into the serial publishers, and because they want to be able to send they have these various Onyx messages so you can know whether you've gotten your issues and things like that, and electronic ones. I still have some hope that that might eventually push publishers into a more standardized form of expressing this information on the serials, and then standards for, in fact, communicating it. And if it does, we have a feel for it now because the Germans brought that to the format. So participation has continued. In June of 2008, that was last year in the summer, we had the meeting, the ALA meeting was in Anaheim. And at that point, we had finished with the German proposals, and the German-Austrian representative joined the MARC Advisory Committee and sat at the big round table that you saw. There we had the first proposals for and discussion papers from the RDA MARC Committee of changes to the format to accommodate RDA. And then in January 2008 in Denver, the Austrian-German representative, after having joined the MARC Advisory Committee, also joined the RDA MARC Committee. And now I think you're sort of fully involved in the work with respect to the format and moving the format forward. You have a voice. So it's been a good development period, I think. And my mention of RDA will lead us into the next presentations, which will focus more on RDA from Tom Delsey and Mark Stewart, discussing RDA in the MARC environment. Thank you.